Okay, that was extemporaneous speaking. The other event that's in limited preparation is impromptu speaking. Now this one puts even a greater premium on off-the-cuff speaking because the times are less and you stay in the room for this sort of thing. Now the way that impromptu speaking works is that in competition at the college level you're given a total of 7 minutes to divide up as you want to. The normal is that when we first start working with students, we allow them to take 2 minutes to prep and speak for 5 minutes, though it's a running clock. As you get better and more proficient, then you would want to take less time to prep so you have more time to be able to speak. Now the first few times, that 2 minutes, you only give about a 2 or 3 minute speech because you couldn't think of that much. But as you get better on this, you will find out that you take less time so that you can say more and you will have more to say. Now in impromptu speaking, the normal deal is that you are given 3 topics. The 3 topics that you are given are not to be current event. Okay, now the reason I say normal deal is that some tournaments they use what is, I think, still the AFA deal where they only have 2 topics and all of the students in the round get the same 2 topics, so they stay outside until it's their turn. But the normal deal that almost every tournament we go to is that the judge is given a packet of topics and each speaker, is their turn, they will hand them a slip of paper that will have these 3 topics on them. These topics generally are things like quotations, proverbs. One year I ran impromptu at Nationals and I did a round of song lyrics and almost anything is possible. At Point Loma they like to have a round of cartoons, they like to have a round of grab bag where a person will reach in and grab out an object and they have to speak on that object. The idea is that within a limited amount of time you can put together a cogent speech, if you will, a message on whatever topic you are given. Now for this one what we're going to do is have Joe give his impromptu, and what I'm going to do is have him come up here and in a minute I'll keep talking while he's prepping so that we don't have dead time and stuff, so I'll continue talking about impromptu. So Joe's going to give the impromptu and what we're going to do though is I'm going to have you suggest topics. We'll give him a choice of 3 just like with Justin. We're going to have you suggest the topics. So does anyone have a favorite proverb, quotation, anything you want him to talk about, anything other than a current event? Roland, I've figured. Yeah.
This is a court of law, young man, not a court of justice.
Okay, that's one. Somebody else have one. Come on.
Sorry.
And a quotation. Okay, I'll do my favorite one. If there were no God, man would find it necessary to create one.
The extra mile has no traffic.
What?
The extra mile has no traffic.
Okay, got those?
I like
Okay.
that one. Yeah, that's good.
So while he's prepping, and then just let me know when you're about ready, I'll figure after a minute I'll stop and stuff. But the idea of this is, and it's oftentimes hard, that normally you have asked it to be very quiet, so I'm going to be somewhat distracting to him, but the person has this time. You will notice he's not writing anything down. If you compete for Moore Park, you will not write anything down. When you're in competition, you'll see people writing on a little slip of paper and stuff like that. I've always argued that that slows down your thought process, and it becomes a crutch. So you have no notes or anything else like that, but you learn to do these sorts of things. We work on building up a backlog of things that you can talk about. We ask people to put together an impromptu notebook, if you will, of things that they've read, bits of history or things that they're popular with, and that's what it is that the person wants to try and have when they're doing this sort of thing. So I'm going to go ahead and we're reaching 1 minute right now, and then the rest of the time, until he starts speaking, I'll tell at 1.5 minutes, 1 minute use. Keep it going.
Robert Frost, in his famous poem talking about the road less traveled, commonly talks about the fact that he sought a road that would be better for him, a road that would be far more beneficial for him. But he noted that this road that commonly is more beneficial for people is the road that is commonly less traveled. It's the road that commonly less people go by because it tends to be a bit harder. It's possibly not as straight, it's possibly a little narrower, and it's possibly a little hillier. And he notes that commonly this kind of road, the one that's not as easy, the one that's a little bit more narrow, the one that causes a little bit more effort, is usually less traveled. And I think of this poem when I think of today's quotation given to me, the extra mile has less traffic. And I think this is going to be incredibly true today, that usually that extra mile, that extra effort, whether it be in several different areas of our lives, is commonly less traveled by people. And I think we're going to be seeing this to be true on 3 different levels. We're going to be seeing this to be true on a religious level, we're going to be seeing this to be true on a political level, and lastly, we're just going to end on a societal level and how we don't keep our word here in the United States. But the first one is on a religious level. Now here in the religious level, in the early area of medieval Europe during the early 400s, the common thing was martyrdom. Martyrdom was the cool thing, because if you read the Bible, there's a lot of stories of people who get killed. And so it was considered kind of in vogue almost to be a martyr. It was considered a time to prove yourself really worth, devoted to the cause and worth salvation and worth grace. But when this message was carried by St. Patrick over to Ireland, there was a little problem because there were no martyrs anymore. Pretty much everyone decided the Catholic Church was pretty hip to join, and so there was no one killing anyone for being Catholic. So there became the problem, well, everyone wants to be a martyr, but no one wants to die. So how do we do this? In fact, people became so reluctant to become a true martyr, they came up with a system of martyrdom, where there was red martyrdom, where it was the real martyrdom, where you actually had to die and get crushed with stones and all sorts of nasty things. Then there was what they called green martyrdom, where they just had to live in the woods and basically be hippies. And then there was white martyrdom, where you had to leave Ireland permanently. But we note here that people commonly, the 2 forms of martyrdom that they would flock to, obviously wasn't red martyrdom. That extra mile was hardly trafficked because, well, it was the extra mile. It was harder. It actually required a lot of sacrifice, unlike just living in the woods or moving away. And so we see commonly here in religion, while people espouse these kind of very idealistic and even utopian principles, we usually see that extra mile, the real spirit of what's being said, usually have less traffic because it's usually harder. But now moving away to religion, we can go to politics. And the one thing we commonly talk about, be it on a state level, a local level, or a federal level, is how, well, there are just no more honest politicians anymore today. They're all corrupt, they're all liars, they're all stupid. But the thing that we note today is, well, usually when you hear people say that, you also hear them go, oh, if only we had politicians like Abraham Lincoln, if only we had politicians like George Washington or Thomas Jefferson. But when you're a little unbiased and you actually go back to Thomas Jefferson or Abraham Lincoln, most notably Abraham Lincoln, you saw these guys also loved to bend the truth a little bit. Due to the fact that YouTube wasn't invented back in the day, these guys could go to one political meeting and espouse one thing, and go to another political meeting and espouse another thing. Vidal Gore, in his book about Lincoln, and usually citing Lincoln's writings, noted this is something that Lincoln was very good at, is saying 2 different things to do 2 different audiences, but making it seem like he was being consistent. And we can see here that that extra mile of truly being honest, of truly being completely consistent to your word, is usually less traffic, even by honest aid. But lastly, leaving politics, we can go in just on a societal level in the book Broken Covenants by Ryan Cootie. Ryan Cootie talks about the fact that that extra mile of keeping your word to your spouse, or keeping your word to your partner, or even to your fiance or girlfriend or boyfriend, is commonly being avoided here in the United States. Why? Because it's hard. And we see that's the number one reason why people give for not keeping the word is, well, if I truly do keep my word to my spouse or my partner, well, I won't be able to get to go to the football game. I won't be able to go with the girls. And so we see here is people commonly break their word, and we see this kind of desacralization of people's word to each other. That extra mile of being honest to your partner isn't being kept here in America, and that's why we have, the book argues, a 50% divorce rate among newlyweds in the United States. So we see here when we view this quotation, that is the extra mile has less traffic, we see on a religious level within Ireland and early Christian Europe, we see on a political level, even with Abraham Lincoln, and we see on a societal level here in the United States amongst ourselves, that when it's going that extra mile, be it in religion and being martyred, either keeping your word as a politician or just keeping your word to your own partner and spouse, that extra mile, because it's a little too difficult for us, seemingly, like Robert Frost, is a little less traveled.